third trimester entailed, and going into labor and delivery, definitely lots of nerves, emotions, feeling anxious and excited to obviously have her here and be here. One of the biggest frustrations I think for me right now is we're currently 3 days out from her due date. She's due, as you've seen in my third trimester video, she's due on November 26th, and it being 3 days away, I have a feeling she's just not having it. I've kind of heard both stories from people saying that your first is usually early. Some people say that your first is usually expected a little bit late. Not really sure what to expect with this one. She seems pretty cozy in there at the moment. I've been in pre-labor now for roughly a week and a half, and just I mean, I've been having contractions the whole time. Contractions have been more common in the evening. I've had them periodically throughout the day, but not as bad. And I asked the doctor about it, and she said it's quite common for women's contractions to be a lot worse in the evening. So that was kind of a little bit, I guess, peace of mind, if you will, just kind of knowing that it's not getting progressively worse, but at the same time it's been very frustrating in, you know, feeling that constant pain. And the best way that I can describe it personally going through it, it's been tolerable, is just like really intense menstrual cramps, if you will. Been having like a lot of lower back pain and stuff. The best way that I've been dealing with discomfort and stuff is Tylenol is needed. I'm trying to steer away from taking a lot of it, so kind of just coping with the pain. Obviously breathing techniques, changing positions, they say that that can often sometimes help alleviate a little bit of the pain. So again, for me it's been tolerable. Been using my Dr. Ho faithfully for that like low back pain that I described, as well as, you know, just having a heating pad, having a warm bath as needed. So those are some things that have kind of helped me cope with the pain. We have been to the hospital a couple times. We seen our doctor last week, and when I was actually having a lot of those intense cramping and stuff, again, not really sure what to expect having it be my first, we wound up going in, and at the time I was having contractions, but I wasn't dilated at that point. They said if anything I was maybe ½ centimeter, but my cervix was still closed and it was really hard. And sure enough, we seen the doctor the next day and my cervix was actually open, and I was 1 centimeter dilated last week. So you can imagine we've tried everything, doctor's recommendations, and, you know, all sorts of things that you read about in terms of how to induce labor naturally, things that you can do at home, bouncing on a Bosu ball, walking, continuing with your physical activities. So for me, I've still been continuing to go through the gym, obviously been taking it easy and mindful that, hey, your water could break at any time. So that's been something that's kind of been in the back of my mind. But again, it's just making sure that I'm not overdoing it, making sure that, you know, I'm not putting myself at risk of tearing ligaments, muscles, those sorts of things, as everything is kind of relaxing a little bit more in preparation for delivery. What else have we tried? Obviously, you know, reading things, people say that another method of inducing is walking the stairs, doing lunges, you know, all those sorts of things. So I've just been, again, trying to relax best as I can and hoping that she's going to come when she's ready. Obviously, that's one thing to expect with babies, is there's no telling when they're going to come. It's pretty much on their time. So we've seen the doctor, as I mentioned yesterday, and no changes, and still only 1 centimeter dilated. So it'll be interesting to see coming into the weekend what that's going to look like, and if there's any changes there. They did a membrane sweep, which is really common in trying to not necessarily induce you, but sometimes it can help bring on labor a little bit faster. It's not always a guarantee, but they always do ask and stuff, and obviously we're anxious to meet her. So that was one thing that they did for us, and again, seeing no significant changes. So gonna see what the weekend brings, and obviously if there's any updates, what that's looking like, how I'm feeling, I'll obviously update you guys. So I just wanted to pop on here really quickly and just share the last week with you guys, what that's been looking like, and hopefully she'll be here on her due date. If not, we have another appointment next week, so if at that point in time she's not here, then they're looking at doing another ultrasound just to check on baby, check on the amniotic fluid levels, make sure the placenta is still looking good. They obviously don't want you going too far over your due date. So that's kind of where we're at, and hoping that we're not carrying into 41 weeks where I'm actually going to be admitted and going to be induced. So again, as things come up, I'll try and update you guys best as possible. And yeah, again, thanks again for those of you that have been watching my journey, and very anxious to be able to share the rest with you guys and give you guys as much information as I can, and kind of what it looked like for me. If you're a first-time mom and you're a little bit scared going into labor and delivery, hopefully I can help alleviate a little bit of your nerves and just give you a little bit of takeaway from my own personal experience. Again, everybody's is going to be different, but I hope my journey will help some of you guys at home watching.
Hey everyone, today is officially baby's due date, Monday, November 26th. It's roughly around 4 o'clock p.m. and obviously she's not here yet. Today's been a rather overwhelming, emotional day for me. Just, again, having gone through the motions this weekend and just the anticipation leading up to her due date, not really sure what's going on, not really sure since Thursday last week if I've even dilated any further than what I was last week. Again, there's no certainty of what's really going on right now or when she's actually coming. So that's been kind of playing on my mind a little bit. Nervous, scared, anxious, excited, all those emotions going on right now. Just trying to keep my mind busy best I can. Had a relaxing weekend and just really tried to, take the last couple days to ourselves and just have that quiet time. Again, not really sure going into this week what to expect. And as I mentioned last week, we have our next doctor's appointment on Wednesday. So depending on what happens, obviously the rest of tonight, tomorrow, will determine what's going to happen on Wednesday, if they're sending me for an ultrasound, if they're going to be looking at doing an induction. Again, all those questions are going to be hopefully answered in the next couple days, but I'm hoping that baby's going to come sooner than later, as there's so many people that are waiting to meet her. So I'll continue to obviously do updates, and hopefully the next video I check in is me sharing the rest of my journey in actually her being here, what that looks like and stuff. Going on 2 weeks of being in pre-labor, still having contractions and back pain and stuff. So again, that's just been pain that I've been, trying to cope with best I can. So again, it's just those little things that kind of play on your emotions, if you will. So hopefully, as I mentioned, that I'm checking in with baby and a baby update instead of a doctor's update on Wednesday.
So today, it being Wednesday, November 28th, we are now 2 days past her due date. Had our doctor's appointment this morning, as I mentioned, if she's not here already. Last night, around probably 7:30 p.m., we wound up making a trip into the labor and delivery department. Contractions started getting really, really strong last night. So of course the rule of thumb is making sure that you're timing them. As I mentioned before, the 5-1-1 rule. So if they're 5 minutes apart, lasting 1 minute for roughly an hour, that's usually your go-to signed to go to the hospital and get checked out. So after talking with HealthLink and getting the go-ahead that if they continue and progress as we had timed them for about an hour, we wound up going in, and unfortunately I got sent home. So reason for that was because once they checked my cervix, I was still only between 1 and 2, well, I was getting close to the 2 centimeter mark. So they wound up just giving me some morphine to help cope with the pain, and unfortunately we got discharged last night. The morphine was more so for kind of like a sleep aid and in hopes of helping with the pain. For me, it didn't really do anything. I'm running on like 2 days of no sleep now, so I'm feeling pretty exhausted. And after leaving our doctor's appointment this morning, we are 3 centimeters dilated, which is good. Things are starting to shorten, so they feel that baby could be here, within the next few days. If for whatever reason she's still not here by Monday, they're going to wind up sending me for my induction. So I'm hoping that, again, we don't have to go the route of being induced. And the doctor said, given the way things are looking and how things are progressing and contractions are getting a lot stronger, the best advice that I can give is really just breathing through them, nice deep breaths. It's honestly, even for myself, I have a high tolerance for pain. It's easier said than done. They are coming on pretty strongly. They did a pretty intense membrane sweep today, so she said that could be feeling the side effects of that kick in a lot more, and contractions are only going to get worse. So yeah, I'm just going to try and relax and get some sleep, and again, I'll continue to update where I can.
Wait till the next time.
latest update, baby's obviously here. I am currently 2 weeks postpartum. So I'm just going to kind of backtrack from where I last left off in my previous video and kind of walk you guys through labor, delivery, what that all looked like in terms of where we're currently at right now with everything, how recovery's been going, breastfeeding. I'm going to cover all of that stuff. So I've kind of made a little bit of a list here. Just there's been so much going on in the last 2 weeks, lots of emotions, getting used to being parents. So it's been exciting, it's been emotional, so many things been happening. So I just kind of want to bring you guys back to the day that I made the last video, going to the doctors, coming home, what kind of happened in between then. Obviously with Babe being here, I haven't really had a chance to do an update. Things have just kind of been chaotic, and we've just been enjoying our time as a family and just getting used to her, getting used to her schedule. So today's the day I'm going to bring you guys up to par on everything that's been going on, what that's been looking like. So going back to Wednesday would have been the 28th. We had our doctor's appointment, as I mentioned. The doctor did a very intense membrane sweep and said that things were going to hopefully progress really quickly, as she had figured that baby could be here by the weekend, and hoping that we didn't have to go in for my induction date, which was scheduled for that Monday, given she wasn't here yet. So what happened that day was, after I made that video, which was kind of short and sweet, I was definitely lacking sleep. So much has been going on during that last week before she was here. Lots of emotions, lack of sleep, just waiting and anticipation building up, wondering when she's going to come. All sorts of things going on. So basically what had happened was contractions were obviously getting stronger that day. I started timing my contractions when I had come home. I was home for about an hour and a half, and I last made that video around, I want to say 11:30 a.m. and I think it was about 12:30 p.m. I was contacting my spouse saying like, hey, Kay, I think things are happening. You should probably come home now. When I came home, I was starting to time my contractions again, as things were getting a little bit more intense, as I mentioned, and just feeling a lot of that like lower abdominal cramping. It was like a really, really intense menstrual cramp is the best way that I can describe it, but it came on so strongly that it was almost like, it was still tolerable, but for me and for my pain tolerance level, it was kind of getting to the point where it was like, okay, like I actually had to breathe, I actually had to stop and take a minute and actually like focus on, you know, breathing. I couldn't move, I couldn't really focus on anything. That's kind of like how the pain started increasing for my experience. So it was at that point I was like, okay, you know what, like maybe I'm going to try and take a nap. That wasn't happening, obviously being in so much pain and just feeling discomfort. I started timing my contractions. So as I mentioned before, they were the night before, roughly about 5 minutes apart. When I started timing them that day that I got home, they were between 2.5 to 3 minutes roughly, and they were about a minute apart. So for me it was like, okay, that's kind of what the doctor said to expect, that, you know, shit's gonna start getting real fast. So I was just kind of like listening to my body. And so hubby came home and him and I kind of just started talking about options. We obviously had our hospital bags ready, we had baby stuff ready, and it was our time to go. So we wound up going back to the hospital that day. We went in the triage, and the nurse like had assessed me, and at that point I think I was about 4 centimeters at that point. And again, you're not technically in active labor until you're about 5-6 centimeters dilated. So until you start hitting those numbers, that's usually when they don't admit you. So they kept me there for a little bit, and just in terms of coping with the pain and stuff, they had offered nitrous, the laughing gas that I had mentioned before, as one of the pain managements, and then the morphine as well. So kind of just hung out in the room. They were timing my contractions, and the doctor was deciding what they were going to do. So because things have kind of started slowly progressing, they said, you know what, like, they turned us away for a little bit. They said, you know what, you guys can just go for a walk, see if that helps. Sometimes that can help move labor along fairly quickly. That's what they were hoping for me in my case, where I had the intense membrane sweep that day, where things were picking up, contractions were getting closer together. So that was looking very hopeful for us. So we had actually left and we walked around the hospital for roughly 2 hours, and again, things were still pretty intense, having to stop, pause, you know, breathe through them. Starting to get a little tired at that point in time, and the pain was, you know, starting to get very uncomfortable. Tried laying down, tried sitting, standing, nothing was happening for me that was making anything better. So after about 2 hours, we went back up to the labor and delivery ward, and we wound up going back. They put us back in a room, and they wound up giving me the nitrous again. I found it kind of easier in the beginning to like actually breathe through it. I found that having that oxygen and stuff kind of took the focus away from some of the contractions. They wound up bringing in a Bosu ball. Again, sometimes like sitting on the ball, bouncing, opening up your hips up can sometimes open up your cervix, dilate you a little bit more. That wasn't happening for me. The second I sat on that ball, it was really uncomfortable for me, just feeling a lot of that pressure. Sitting, standing, there was really no position that felt good for me at that point in time. So it was just really that like mind-body connection of just, okay, breathe through it. And you know, contractions were still roughly a minute and a half apart, give or take. So for me, it didn't feel like boom, 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 like back to back. So I felt like I had a little bit of a break in between each one. And over a period of time, the nitrous, I'm not going to say it wasn't working, but for me, it was more or less my mind shifted and I was kind of focusing more on the contractions. So they wound up checking me again, and I was still sitting at 4 centimeters. Actually, no, I think I bumped up to 4.5 centimeters at that time. Doctor came and assessed me, and same thing. They had said, you know what, like you could go walk for another hour, a couple hours, come back, we'll recheck you again. And at that point in time, I was also given a shot of morphine. As I mentioned, I had had one the night before as well to cope with the pain, and that was doing nothing for me. So it was kind of at that point where it was, you know, hit and miss as to what they were going to do, because they didn't technically feel that I was ready to be admitted, because I was still so far away from actually being at that point where you're in active labor, and then they kind of progressively, you progress further so that they actually bring you in and you're, you know, ready, you're right there, ready to push. So for me, as soon as they had turned me away, we started packing up our stuff, getting ready to go, kind of, you know, do our little walk a bit. At that point in time, I was feeling really nauseous. I was feeling, you know, really tired. And it literally felt like it would have taken me an hour just to get myself up off the bed to actually leave the room. So when the nurses had came back, we had actually asked them if we could stay, and they knew that, you know, the amount of pain that I was experiencing at that point in time, that they didn't really want to obviously see me suffering and turn me away. So they had admitted me at 4.5 centimeters. They put us in a room, which was beautiful. We had a nice big room. Dad had his own bed. We had our own bathroom in there. Phenomenal service from like all the nurses, the staff, the room service, if you will, that we got. It was amazing. So it was nice once we got in our room. I was able to actually have access to like the bathroom, and as soon as I got admitted in my room, I remember just wanting to go just for a nice hot shower, have that nice warm water on my back. That actually felt really good. I feel that I was in the shower for probably an hour, and then at that point in time I was like, you know what, like I'm feeling really good. I could probably get out, move around, walk a little bit more, take a bit of a break. So I left the shower, and I remember standing in the room, and I remember every time I had a contraction, the nurse, everybody was kind of like, okay, you know what, like, well, wait till you're done. I was able to still talk with them, still kind of in good spirits for the most part. Again, the pain was still there, but it was, again, something I could breathe through and wait for the next one, have a bit of a comfortable break, if you will, in between. So things were still kind of 50-50, if you will. The doctor came in and we were discussing different options. They had asked me quite a few times actually if I had wanted an epidural, and one of the nurses had recommended, and even the doctor, when we were still in the triage before they actually admitted us into a room, they were kind of being a little bit pushy with the epidural, which, if you guys remember, I had kind of talked and expressed about different things, risk factors, different concerns with the epidural, and just my personal preference, views around things. And even in our birth plan, I had decided that I wanted to wait and see if I could actually handle the pain, how I was going to be coping with that, because you don't know. It's not one of those things that you can predict and go, oh, holy shit, I'm not going to be able to tolerate this pain, yay or nay. It could go either way. So for me, it was just kind of riding it out and just seeing. And when the doctor had come in, she had again mentioned the epidural, said, you know what, like, that's an option if you're really uncomfortable, because sitting where you are at right now, 4.5 centimeters, that could progress for hours, that could progress for days. Again, I was still kind of in that beginning stages, if you will, that there was no telling when she was actually going to come. So I kind of sat with it, thought about it, and the other thing was for them to induce me and break my water and have labor obviously skyrocket and progress very, very quickly. So given where I was kind of at in terms of having pre-labored for 2 weeks before, feeling those mild contractions that were tolerable, where I was at that point in time, talking with my partner, we decided, like, yes, you know what, maybe for me it's probably for the better if I actually have them go in, break my water, and hopefully things are going to progress a lot quicker. So that's the route that we went. I think my water was broke around 8:30 p.m. and I remember being in the bed, and for any of you moms who have ever experienced having your water break in public, obviously know what that feels like. Very uncomfortable feeling, right? As soon as they broke my water, it literally felt like I was in a pool of water. So for me, it was, you know what, like, let's get comfortable again. I felt like going back in the shower. So I remember standing back in the shower and just wanting to just, again, feel that warmth on my body, and that was probably the only thing that I found for my personal preference that worked for me. Tried changing, you know, some different positions, walking and stuff wasn't really comfortable for me in terms of coping with the contractions. So standing in the shower, I felt okay when I first went in, and then it was literally like 0 to 100 in what felt like seconds. I remember standing in the shower and just being in excruciating pain. And again, for me, I don't think there's anything on this earth that could ever compare to the feeling that I was going through, and just the contractions, and in terms of coping, trying to cope with that pain. And again, for me, going through that, I look at, you know, getting a tattoo, stubbing your toe, like whatever the case may be, and all that shit seems so easy now compared to that. And I'm sure for all you moms too, like, if there's anything, when people say, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst experience you've ever experienced, like child labor, we can all agree that nothing will ever compare to that. For me anyway, that's how I feel. And so yeah, things were getting really, really intense, and I remember just like bawling, and I wanted the pain to go away. And again, it's one of those things you don't know. It could be hours, it could be a day, right? It's whenever baby's ready to come, they come. So I just remember standing there thinking, like, holy shit, like, I can't handle this pain anymore. And I remember thinking about the epidural, thinking about my feelings around it, and just thinking, like, you know what, like, if this is what I'm feeling now, and I'm going to feel this for like hours or days, especially when they had broke my water, I knew I was still at 4.5 centimeters. And again, just thinking, like, well, how much longer is it going to be until you get to 10? It seems like so far away. For me, it was like, okay, no, like, I have to make a decision. And I sat with it for about 15-20 minutes, and then finally it was like, no, you know what, like, I can't handle this anymore. So I had actually, I'm going to back up a little bit. Even before then, Before they had broke my water, I had said to the nurses, because the IV that they have to give you first, and then you get your epidural, and then they give you the intravenous medicine. So I remember saying to the nurse before then, I said, you know what, like, let's just have one on standby. At least if I have the IV and I decide that I need to get an epidural, it's already going to be there. So that's what we had decided to do. So I didn't have the IV at that point in time. They had broke my water before we had actually got to that point. So standing in the shower, I said, no, like, you know what, like, let's do this. Let's get the IV going. Let's kind of start things. I think I want the epidural. So I remember sitting back on the bed and them paging the doctor, and literally that probably felt like the longest. I want to say it maybe took them half an hour. I don't even know. Just looking back, it literally felt like it took them 2 hours to come back to the room. And at that point in time, contractions, I don't even know how close the contractions were, but it literally felt like I didn't get a break. It felt like I had a contraction, and then I was in excruciating pain, and then it was like, okay, literally 1 or 2 seconds went by, and then boom, I had another one. And I just remember standing, I was just in so much pain. And it's actually funny looking back now, because when we did our prenatal class, the instructor was saying, you know what, it's once you're in active labor, it's like, you know, things get weird. You hear weird sounds, you do things. Like, I even surprised myself. Is just, you know, your mind just goes blank. Like, I remember, you know, like, I saying, like, I can't do this, I can't handle it. Like, all of those things are normal. I remember at one point in time, I was feeling like I was able just to, like, push her out. I remember yelling, screaming, saying things like, you know, just get her out of me. Like, it's just so, you just go in this mode of just like, oh my God, it's just, you're in so much distress, you're in so much pain, you're bawling, you just don't know what to do. So I remember waiting for them to come and get the epidural, and for me, I think the hardest part was obviously trying to sit still through that. Sitting in that, like, hunched over position for them to actually get the epidural up your back. And by the end of the week, like, I literally felt like a pincushion. It was ridiculous. The nurses trying to give me an IV, and it was not a fun experience. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and lie about it. So once we had got the epidural, the contractions had actually started subsiding in terms of, like, my pain level for what I was experiencing. I was actually able to, like, get back on the bed, lay down, actually deal and cope with the pain a lot better than I was prior to that. And I remember just, like, laying there, and then I remember it literally felt like I had the epidural, and then 15 minutes later it was like I feel like a lot of pressure. Like, I feel like baby's ready to come out. I feel I'm ready to push. And I remember the nurses and the doctor, even when they came in, they said, you know what, like, we're not going to check you. Obviously, the more checks that they do, you're at risk of getting an infection, the more times that they have to go in and check your cervix. So they didn't want to keep doing that with me. However, just given how I was feeling and the pain and the pressure that I was experiencing, they said, you know what, like, maybe we'll check you just in case. And sure enough, I was actually already 10 centimeters dilated at that point, and it was like, okay, now shit gets real. Now we're ready to push. Let's do this. So I was really surprised, and even the nurses, they said, you know what, like, that almost never happens. And even myself, just thinking back to going through the contractions and experiencing that whole ordeal, and just as soon as they broke my water, how intense things got, how quickly they progressed. I remember thinking that, holy cow, that was the worst pain that I would have felt. And of course I didn't know that without them going in and checking my cervix and seeing that I was 10 centimeters. But I had pretty much labored naturally, which was even mind-blowing for me. I was already 10 centimeters when I had gotten my epidural, and then it was just a matter of pushing her. She came fairly fast. She was about 45 minutes pushing, and it's funny because I remember at one point in time I was laying there and I was waiting for the next contraction to push, and the contractions weren't really what was hurting me. I just remember feeling like a lot of discomfort, especially when you could feel her head start to push through. I remember saying to the doctors, like, is she going in and out? Is she rocking back and forth? Because that's kind of what it feels like. So I still had a lot of sensation of what was going on. And I just remember laying there, and actually at one point I almost fell asleep, which is amazing and just mind-blowing. But yeah, she came out no problem. And then delivery of the placenta came immediately right after. I don't even remember feeling that at all. And the doctors had said, you know, like, did you actually want to see the placenta? And it was ironic because, as you guys can see from the picture, she actually had tied a knot in her placenta, which is really cool. But I mean, I don't know, it's one of those things that, like, I think the doctors had said that had she been left longer, that could have, like, put her at risk of, like, oxygen supply or whatever. But yeah, it was really neat. Even the doctors were a little surprised, and they said, you know, that, like, almost never happens. So that's pretty much the gist of what labor had looked like. And it was, I can't even explain just the experience of just seeing her for the first time. It was absolutely amazing. And just having Dad there, the nurses, everybody was phenomenal. The nurse that we actually had there, she stayed with us from the time that we had got admitted into the hospital until the following morning when her shift was over. So it was just fantastic. And they took baby as soon as she came out, like, after, for us to get, like, a little bit of sleep and stuff. And it was just really nice to, you know, kind of be a little bit pampered in that sense, and just know that, you know, everything went good. I was feeling great after delivery. No concerns with baby. They wound up cleaning her up, and, you know, we had that bonding time, as I mentioned before. Her and I had that skin-to-skin contact. Did the first feeding, which went really good. And then, yeah, they took babe, wound up washing her up and stuff. And I think it was roughly about 2 hours after having her that I was up and, you know, having a shower and stuff and feeling a little bit better. I had sensation back in my body and stuff. And that was one of the things with the epidural, is you're actually in control of how much, it was like increasing the dosage, if you will, in terms of what you're feeling, how the contractions are going and stuff, as you're actually able to self-control how much. It's obviously under, it's obviously not one of those things that you can just, like, you know, go hog wild on, but you're actually in control of how much of a dose that you need depending on how you're tolerating the pain and stuff. And I think I maybe pushed the button twice, maybe 3 times, but again, it was enough that it wasn't that I couldn't feel anything, or that, you know, it was like hours and hours before I was up and walking around. So that was really good. And then, yeah, just in terms of, like, recovery, breastfeeding, all that stuff, I'm feeling really good in terms of, you know, how the delivery went. And we had actually left the hospital. They had actually asked us if we wanted to be discharged earlier, if we wanted to stay another night. We had actually decided that we wanted to come home with her. So it was actually the same day that we had her. I think it was like around 9:20. We wound up leaving the hospital, so we didn't wind up staying, which was nice. We got to come home and get settled in, and, you know, get her in her own bassinet, and just even for us be in our own bed, in our own space. And, you know, the first few days was a huge adjustment, just getting her home and us getting into a routine, and, you know, lacking sleep, and coffee becomes your new BFF if it wasn't already before. I don't think I've drank this much coffee since even before having her. But yeah, it's been a surreal experience, and it's one of those things that you look at, and just looking back, like, everybody says, yeah, you don't remember the pain and stuff, which is true. But when I look back and when I think about it, it's just so surreal, and you just think to yourself, like, holy shit, I actually did that. And just having this beautiful being in front of you just makes everything seem like so long ago. Even as I've kind of mentioned the whole time, is it just feels like we literally found out yesterday that, you know what, we're pregnant, we're having her. And then the last few weeks just seemed to kind of slow down a little bit. Discomforts and stuff started picking up in terms of sleeping and what that looks like. And then just boom, they're here. So I'm really glad we didn't have to get induced and just, she was a few days late, but it was a few days worth the wait, of course. And yeah, I'm gonna continue to update you guys as much as possible in terms of postpartum, how training's going and stuff once we actually get back into like a routine, get into the groove of things, and yeah, just how that's looking like. So it's definitely been one of the most interesting, surreal experiences ever. I can't even explain it for those of you that are new to parenting, or I should say going to be, soon to be parents. It's like the most beautiful thing that you could experience, and just enjoy every moment of it. Enjoy going through the pregnancy and just everything leading up to it. It's one of those things that is so special, and I'm super grateful for just us being her parents and for everything that we got to experience and everything that we've gone through, all the memories that we've shared before her, and everything now that we have to look forward to as well. In terms of recovery, it's been really, really good for me. I'm feeling really great. The first week I was like a little bit sore, but that's obviously to be expected. I feel that one of the things that helped with discomfort, which they have at the hospital and they recommend that you do coming home, is having frozen pads in the freezer, just soaking them with a little bit of water, putting them in the freezer and stacking them. I felt that really helped soothe with the pain. For me, I was very, very fortunate. I didn't have any type of tearing or anything like that, and I feel that it was really beneficial in, again, doing the perinatal massages, whether that's you doing them yourself, doing them with your partner. Obviously, your partner is going to be able to help you a little bit more in terms of what's actually visually being seen, and in terms of helping stretch your cervix in preparation for delivery, as well as I mentioned the primrose capsules, which is just opening up the pill and inserting them in your cervix, letting all the liquid dissolve, helping that soften your cervix as well. I feel that really, really helped me. I've heard horror stories of people getting tons of stitches and how shitty their recovery's been, how it's been like painful and stuff like that. So I feel very fortunate that I didn't have any type of tearing or anything like that. So again, highly, highly recommend doing your homework and doing the perinatal massages. Again, starting 35 weeks out is usually recommended. If you want to start sooner, I don't see why that would have any difference on making or breaking your delivery. In terms of physical activity, obviously not really doing much of anything right now. We had seen the doctor for Haley's first visit last Thursday, and then they checked her again yesterday, just wanting to make sure that she was gaining her birth weight back, as she wasn't really up on the scale last week. She had actually dropped from her birth weight down to 745, and then yesterday she's up to 715, so that's looking really, really good. And even just as great as I feel and stuff, being 2 weeks postpartum, the doctor, obviously with your pelvic floor still being very weak, your cervix is still shrinking, everything's still kind of like reconstructing itself, getting back to normal. They don't recommend any type of heavy lifting in terms of like weights, things at home, stuff like that. So I'm still looking at the 6-week marker, so I'm looking probably not until after the new year now. I still got about another 4 weeks to go. Just been trying to do lots of walking when I am out, taking her in the stroller, going for walks around the track and stuff, just to actually make sure I'm not only getting out of the house, so I'm not going to go stir crazy, but just making sure that I'm still giving my body that as well, which is, super important in terms of just getting back in the swing of things and just maintaining your physical activity as well. So nothing really happening right now. I'm going to continue to update you guys and take you guys through my postpartum throughout the rest of the year, just in small increments, and what that's looking like in terms of just regaining everything back, strength, physical appearance, all that stuff. In terms of breastfeeding, it's actually been going really, really good. Again, I would highly, highly recommend doing the prenatal classes. If you guys are able to, seek out a lactation consultant. We did have one at the hospital, and then when we had our visit from the nurse the following day, she was also a lactation consultant as well, which was super helpful in terms of them being able to look and identify, making sure baby's latching properly, how that's looking, you know, making sure that you're not having the dry, cracked, bleeding, sore nipples and stuff. So as I mentioned before, I actually get it and understand it now, because if you are having any of those symptoms, chances are you're not properly, not only training yourself, but you're also training baby how to latch on as well. So just making sure that you're unlatching and relatching where needed, so that baby's able to use more of the jaw suckling as opposed to using more of the tongue and more of the lips. Again, there's that bottle and there's the nipple, the difference in how baby's latching and stuff, not confusing the two. So for us, we funny enough, we have actually gone the route of the pacifier, and because I was doing like a little bit of pumping and stuff, just actually able to physically see volume in terms of what baby's actually getting. She was having a little bit, not that she was having issues feeding, but we weren't really sure how much she was feeding, and it turned out that she actually wasn't feeding enough. So we were just monitoring how much we're actually giving her in terms of me being able to pump, and actually looking at the volume of how much she's drinking every day, making sure that she is getting enough food. So for me, we were giving her a bottle, but again, there's just different ways of making sure that, you know, baby's still latching on properly when you are giving the bottle to the baby, is actually with the nipple itself. I'm not sure if you guys will be able to see this or not. With the nipple itself is actually, obviously you're still going to have baby in the same position, is rather than putting the bottle in baby's mouth so that they're only sucking on the tip of it, is you almost want to insert the bottle and kind of like corkscrew it a little bit so that it's kind of like forced in the back of their throat again, so that they're going to have more of that jaw suckling, as opposed to just sucking on the tip of the nipple. If they're sucking on the tip of the nipple, chances are they're going to nipple feed from you, which is not what we want. We're breastfeeding, we're not nipple feeding. So that's something that, again, is just making sure that if you do decide to go the route of having a bottle, whether you're pumping or whether you're giving, you know, baby formula or whatever, is just making sure that they are having that nice deep latch if you're mixing breast milk and formula. So I found that we worked around it, and that's something that's worked great for us. And we did, as I mentioned, have baby's first checkup, and she's looking really good. She's above her birth weight and stuff. So nothing noted there in terms of concerns and stuff. It's actually funny because we have gotten so many like 0 to 3 month outfits for her, and FYI, 0 to 3 months, unless your baby's kind of on the bigger scale of, I guess, average maybe. In terms of baby clothes and stuff, maybe hold off. We had gotten like a lot of 0 to 3 month stuff from our baby shower. We have bought her like a lot of cute little outfits too, thinking, oh, 0 to 3 months, like, so 0's still in that newborn, and then up to 3 months, yeah, she doesn't fit any of her clothes. We had to go out and buy all like brand new newborn clothes for her because she's just so tiny, and she didn't fit anything. So obviously they grow super fast. But yeah, that's been going really, really good. And again, with just the checkups from the nurses and stuff, they want you to monitor how much baby's eating, how often they're feeding, things like that. We're trying to get her on a schedule where she's feeding every 3 to 4 hours during the day, and then in the evening we've noticed she tends to sleep a little bit more, which is nice. We've had a few tough nights of her being a little bit fussy in the early morning hours and stuff, which is obviously just part of being parents. But it's just getting in the swing of things, getting her on a schedule, getting us in the schedule as well. And everybody that says nap when baby naps, they're not friggin' joking, especially if you have stuff to do during the day. The first few weeks, even the doctor says the first 2 weeks, like, you're literally like in survival mode and nothing gets done. I remember the first few days we came home from the hospital, it was literally like a friggin' bomb went off in our house. There was just stuff everywhere. Baby stuff here, baby stuff there, and then of course, like, you know, trying to make time for the dogs, and there's a lot going on. So just the best advice I could give you guys from my own experience and from what I have been going through is just be gentle with yourself. There's so much stuff that's new going on, is being gentle with each other, making sure that you guys are communicating, making sure that you guys, as I mentioned before, are working together, that you guys are having communication. Moms, it's obviously a flood of hormones, pre-pregnancy, post-pregnancy, there's a lot going on. It's a lot to take in, and just getting in the swing of things can be overwhelming. It can be stressful. Again, even for myself, there's been a boatload of emotions and stuff, is, just looking at her and just feeling how surreal it is. At the same time, you're so tired, you have no energy, it's just one of those things that I've been told it gets better, and I feel that with every single day it gets better. We're getting more of the hang of it and stuff, and it's only going to be upscale from here, and the best thing that we're trying to do is just enjoy it as much as possible. As tired as we are, you kind of have to laugh through some of the shit and just deal with it as it comes. There's no right, there's no wrong. It's just getting used to, there's you guys and then there's baby, and is just adapting to their schedule. So that's kind of where we're at with things. We've had a fantastic 2 weeks, as tired as we have been, and with everything going on and trying to get her situated and organized and stuff put away, and laundry and diapers and dogs and life, and trying to even make time for ourselves and eat, and it's been a lot, but it's all well worth it. And being a mom is just, it's been amazing. I can't even explain how it's changed my life and how I just feel changed as a person. I can't really put it into words, but it's almost like you feel like a brand new person, and it's just been fantastic. So I'm really excited to continue to share updates with you guys, and really excited to get back into the gym. Obviously, I'm not in any rush to do any of that. I want to enjoy her and my time home as much as possible. But yeah, I just really hope that some of the things that I shared with you guys throughout my pregnancy has helped you guys, and that you guys are able to put forth some things, some tips, some advice, and if there's anything further that I can do, anything else that I can provide and offer for you guys, whether that's in reference to working out, in reference to training, nutrition regime, anything like that, feel free to reach out to me. Again, my email is shreddedphysiquesteam@gmail.com. I'd love to network with you guys, and just really looking forward to what's upcoming for us and our new life together with our new +1. So thank you so much again for those of you guys that are watching, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel for further updates. And again, any questions, comments, concerns, shoot me an email. I'd love to hear back from you guys, and until next time, stay happy and stay healthy.